The House Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Committee will come to order. Will the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Shannon.
Present.
Representatives McDonald.
Present.
Conlon.
Present.
Edwards.
Here.
Farhat.
Here.
Fitzgerald.
Here.
Hoskins.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Altman.
Here.
Roth.
Here.
Bruck.
Present.
Koontz.
Here.
St. Germain.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 13 members present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you. I need a motion to adopt minutes from our last meeting on March 5th. Representative Hoskins makes that motion. Seeing no opposition, the minutes are adopted. Today on the agenda, we'll be voting out House Bill 5304 and then taking testimony on House Bills 5223 and 5224, as well as Senate Bill 465. So we will quickly take the votes before testimony. First up is House Bill 5304. Representative Bruck is offering an H1 substitute. Representative, would you like to speak to your substitute?
Thank you, Chair Shannon. We did the H1 just to clarify a few things in it. To clarify essentially that it is the leftmost lane that is prohibited in a 3-lane or more limited access freeway. And then the construction zone clarification as well was put in the substitute.
Thank you for the clarification. Can I get a motion to adopt the H1 substitute? Vice Chair Outman makes that motion. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote?
On the motion to adopt the H1 substitute, Chair Shannon.
Yes.
Representatives McDonald.
Yes.
Conlon.
Yes.
Edwards.
Yes.
Farhat.
Yes.
Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Hoskins.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Altman.
Yes.
Roth.
Here. Yes.
Bruck.
Yay.
Koontz.
Yes.
St. Germain.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 13 yeas, 0 nays, 0 pass. The substitute is adopted.
The H1 substitute is adopted. We have cards to read in on this one. No cards. Okay. I need a motion to report House Bill 5304 with recommendation as substituted. At H1, Representative Koontz makes that motion. Would the clerk please take a roll call vote?
On the motion to report, Chair Shannon.
Yes.
Representatives McDonald.
Yes.
Conlon.
Yes.
Edwards.
Yes.
Farhat.
Yes.
Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Hoskins.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Altman.
Yes.
Roth.
Yes. Yes.
Bruck.
Yay.
Koontz.
Yes.
St. Germain.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 13 yeas, 0 nays, 0 pass. House Bill 5304 is reported with recommendation as substitute H1.
For testimony today, we have House Bill 5223 and 5224. Thank you, Rep. Rogers and Rep. Schutte. If you'd like to join us up here, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Chair Shannon and members of the House Committee on Transportation. Thank you so much for hearing our testimony on a bipartisan, bicameral, vulnerable roadway user package of bills. Today before you is House Bills 5523, my bill, and Representative Schutte's bill 5224. Please note that they are tie-barred to Senate Bills 617 and 618, which is Senator McCann's and Senator Kleinfeld's. The package expands protections for pedestrians, bicyclists, individuals using a wheelchair, or an individual riding or operating a vulnerable transportation device. These bills are important to me and others across the state because I am a runner and a cyclist. I have known residents in my county who have sustained serious injuries after being struck by a vehicle, and I have experienced a few near misses myself while on the road or on the shoulder of the road. And later, you will hear powerful testimony from a survivor of the most deadly bicycle tragedy in our state to date, which occurred on June 7, 2016, when 5 cyclists, as part of a group ride called the Chain Gang, were killed by a reckless driver in Kalamazoo County. Others who survived had significant injuries. This tragedy rocked our community, and we will never be the same. As a physical therapist, I want to share with you the trauma and suffering that some of my patients have endured after being hit while they were out exercising and simply enjoying life. Rehabbing through physical pain is challenging enough. Losing one's mobility and relearning everyday life skills like walking, dressing yourself, holding a pencil, and eventually returning to your sport requires perseverance. But equally devastating is when these survivors describe the aftermath and their re-traumatization when the driver of the vehicle involved in their crash is not held accountable. We are here today to try to make a difference by providing enhanced penalties for moving violations that cause serious injury or death and providing a definition for vulnerable transportation device. My bill, House Bill 5223, adds a section to the Michigan Vehicle Code of 1949, PA 300, and defines a vulnerable roadway device as a device in, on, or by which an individual or property may be transported or drawn on a highway or street by human power or by an electrical propulsion system with an average power of 750 watts or 1 horsepower and a maximum speed on a paved surface of not more than 30 miles per hour. This can include, but is not limited to, electric personal assistive mobility device defined in Section 13C, electric bicycles as defined by Section 13E, an electric skateboard as defined by Section 13F, a bicycle as defined by Section 4. After conversations with many stakeholders, we amended the language to include all e-bikes and other vulnerable roadway users utilizing mobility devices that may be electric and have used definitions from Michigan's Vehicle Code. According to the data, we are seeing a larger percentage of all U.S. roadway fatalities involving vulnerable road users who are involved in crashes with motor vehicles. In March of 2022, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration released its 2020 annual traffic crash data, showing the highest number of fatalities since 2007. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, known as IIJA, federal statute signed into law in November of 2021, established a new special rule under the Highway Safety Improvement Program for vulnerable roadway users, which offers solutions and grants to improve safety for the non-motorized road users. The U.S. Department of Transportation has released regulations addressing the safety of vulnerable road users through a multifaceted, collaborative, and comprehensive approach that allows people who walk, bike, and roll to fully and safely access our transportation system. Our bill package seeks to align with the federal grants and modernize Michigan's vehicle code, as currently there is no distinction amongst road users in our state. MSP, MDOT, Michigan Prosecutors Association, Michigan League of Bicyclists, and Bike Friendly Kalamazoo are a few stakeholders who have been engaged with us in this journey crafting this legislation. Thank you again for hearing testimony on our bills today. We also, in addition to Rep. Schutte, have Matt Penniman with the Michigan League of Bicyclists and Paul Runnels with Bike Friendly Kalamazoo wishing to testify. I'm happy to take questions now or at the end. Thank you.
I think we'll have Rep. Schutte go, and then if we have any questions for the both of you, we'll take those then. So Rep. Schutte?
Yep. Well, thank you, Chair Shannon, Vice Chair Outman, members of the Transportation Committee. I appreciate your time today for the opportunity to testify in support of this legislative package. And I'm proud to be a sponsor of House Bill 5224 and co-sponsor with my colleague from the 60th District. And like our testimony today, these bills are bipartisan with numerous of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle, both sides of this committee room, in fact, in support and as co-sponsors. But beyond that, they're just good common sense legislation. So my bill would enact stronger penalties in our state sentencing guidelines for causing serious injury to a vulnerable roadway user to a maximum of 5 years in prison and to a maximum of 15 years if the accident results in the death of a victim. Now, I understand that these penalties sound very serious, but the consequences of striking and severely injuring a roadway user, those are serious as well. The lives and the lives of families who have been victims of these accidents, they are never the same. And I believe that strong penalties are an important deterrent of unsafe conduct on our roads and can help protect some of those who are most at risk along our streets. And currently in the status quo, our punishment and subsequent deterrence, they are lacking. Causing an injury or even a death right now results just in a temporary suspension of a driver's license and points on a license. And I don't think that's anywhere near the appropriate guidance for the consequence of severely impacting one's life forever. And I would also note that these newly enacted or proposed changes to our sentencing guideline, they mirror what's done in 12 other states from Florida to Hawaii, Connecticut, Colorado, and they also mirror what is in our current state sentencing guideline for injuring or killing a road worker. So they're in line with previous practices in other states and in our own state as well. So, as many of you know, I'm a runner, and I love to run on our great rail trail in Midland, whereas I log most of my miles. But I also have to run on our roads get to run on our roads at various points throughout our state. And please don't tell my mother this, but I've had some close calls with drivers who are not paying attention to runners like me on the shoulder of the road. And if you're in a crash with a motor vehicle and you're a runner, you're a pedestrian, you're a bicyclist, it's not going to end well. And that's why I think it is very important that we enact this legislation to help protect and deter unsafe conduct on the roads. Thank you for your time today. And with Representative Rogers, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Representatives. We do have a few questions here. We'll start with Minority Vice Chair Outman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representatives, for being here to testify on your bill. You've already touched on this, but could you just elaborate on the increase in traffic fatalities involving pedestrians and how this bill seeks to address that? Is it mostly just the deterrent aspect of the legislation, or are there other things embedded within the bill as well?
I can take that and chime in if you'd like, Rep. Schutte, but there has been an increase in traffic fatalities both in Michigan and across the country. One of the factors that's been cited is speed, and I think other legislation has come before us this term even addressing speed and that piece of it and enforcement. I do think that just like when the 3-foot passing law was enacted a few years ago, when legislation like this goes through, it is educational in and of itself because it gets press and attention, and we start having these conversations in a public format that really makes it more visible and reminds drivers that they need to pay attention and share the road.
And I would just chime in as well. I think we're increasingly seeing our roadways being multi-use, not just for cars, but we touched on e-bikes, but runners, pedestrians. I think they're using our roads more, and I think that's another reason why this is incredibly important.
Sure, and it does seem like this is becoming more frequent. I even had a professor in college that a few years back that was killed on just a regular bicycle from a motor vehicle. But just in terms of the data, and I don't know if you guys have viewed this, but what is the most common, result of this? Is it because of distracted driving, drug and alcohol use? Is there any data that suggests what is the overwhelming driver of these increase in fatalities?
We can get back to you on specifics, but I think you touched on it's kind of an all of the above. I think distracted driving is a piece, and I have seen preliminary data earlier this year since we enacted the distracted driving laws that is coming down. The number of incidents that MSP is viewing is coming down as a result of that legislation we passed recently. Drugs and alcohol is certainly a factor, as well as I referenced earlier, speeds.
Okay. Thank you both for being here.
And I'll just comment because you reminded me of something that we had taken up earlier this year, the distracted driving bills. It's a shame that we have to do this stuff, that people don't take the responsibility of driving a car. It's just crazy to see these people out there driving so recklessly. So I digress there. So thank you. Representative Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick 2 questions, I hope. Overall, I agree. I have a former coworker that was hit by a car when a guy went around a car parked at a crosswalk and actually hit somebody, and now she will live with that for the rest of her life. One issue I want to make sure is clear. They had another situation in my same district where 2 bike riders were riding, single file alongside the road, but a guy came over the hill and the sun literally blocked the vision, and he hit them both, killed one, injured the other. Making sure that we have some flexibility in the law is good. The other one I have is I'm a little concerned with the electric skateboard part of it. The rest of them make perfect sense. We had in one of my communities a guy trailering surfboards and other things to the beach on an electric skateboard. I'm a little concerned on that part of it, and just that we take note, and I want to look a little more into that before I support that part of it. But I think most of it's pretty darn good, and maybe you guys have some anecdotes to share with me back.
Yeah, I would just respond that this legislation certainly does not change the regular investigative process. So if there is an incident, then and law enforcement is engaged, they are going to do a full investigation to see who was at fault. And this legislation does not change that. So I believe in the judicial and legislative process, and I think that the law enforcement would deliberate and see what the facts of the case were.
And if someone is, running in a reckless manner or using an electric, skateboard in a reckless manner, that would be, accounted for in that process.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Representative Kuntz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like the phrase "share the road." I like what you're saying there. In my district, we also share the responsibility. We not only have runners and bikers, but we have Amish, and they're required some high visibility. There are some high visibility requirements. Would you be amenable to that type of language? If you run on the road, you need to be visible. You need to have lights. Maybe running without lights, but a bike. One or the other. But I don't think we need to share the responsibility on this. If you're going to run on the road, you should wear high vis. If you're going to bike on the road, you should have lights. Is that something we can talk about?
Yeah, I think you make a good point, and I know that I personally try to wear very high visibility clothes when I'm running, and I think most of the bicyclists that we know, try to adopt that system of responsibility as well. But I think that kind of goes also into the idea of the investigative process and the guidelines of I think there has to be a personal responsibility that anyone who is sharing the road and using the road adopts. So.
I would echo Rep. Schutte.
Should we quantify it or just say be responsible?
I think it's hard to quantify, the amount of reflective gear or something that you're using. I know it's somewhat more easier when you're applying to a horse and buggy versus a bike is bigger than a runner, and some runners are bigger than others, and I'm smaller than most. So there's it might be difficult to provide exact quantification. I think that's where, again, these are sentencing guidelines, and we rely upon our investigative process, our judicial process, to see what was the full dynamics going on in this scenario. This is not any person who hits a pedestrian is automatically 15 years. If the pedestrian was darted out in front of the street, then in a reckless manner and the driver's not at fault, those are handled very differently.
I would also like to point out in many cases, particularly the Kalamazoo incident with the chain gang, it was in broad daylight and visibility was not an issue.
Thank you. Representative Conlon.
Well, my question was answered, but I will say that these harsher penalties, along with our distracted driving laws, I think are going to be great in tandem to one another. Living in Ann Arbor, Michigan, we do have distracted walkers, which are the students who definitely have their earbuds in and on their phones. However, it still feels very much like my responsibility to not hit anybody. So, obviously, when you're in a car, that is the bigger burden. Thank you for bringing these to us.
Representative St. Germain.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo a couple of my colleagues. I just drive a regular bike. I kind of look like Dorothy going down the street, but my husband had to buy one of those electric, motorized, and he can go almost 20, 25 miles an hour. But just echoing, we have a bike path and quite a few knuckleheads riding alongside of the road that, especially at night, I just don't see them on the 2-lane highways or roadways. So that's my only concern.
Okay, seeing no questions for the representatives. Thank you. Oh, did I miss one? Representative Bruck, my apologies. Skipped over you.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Pardon the pun, but I want to segue off of Coons just a little bit. The difference between mopeds and electric bikes. So I do drive a lot, as we all do. We see the e-bikes are very popular. They speed 25, 30 miles an hour at times. Sometimes they're on the sidewalks. They're on the road. They cross the crosswalks when I know they're not supposed to. That's not legal. But for a moped, it's about the same speed. You go 25, 30. For I would say the smaller mopeds that are out there, they have to be road legal. They have to have blinkers. They have to have all the requirements of the roadway. I guess my concern would be the e-bikes because of the speed, because of the way they shift about. I guess my request would be possibly somehow putting in requirements for those that operate, especially the e-bikes. I mean, I can understand. I've seen a lot of just regular pedal bikes that have blinkers on the back or, a flashing light and that. But obviously, they're electric powered. They have the capability to have some sort of light on them. And I guess that would be kind of something I'd be wary about because they do drive at night. They don't have lights. And they operate kind of similar to a regular bike, but they're not. They're much faster and mobile, but that would kind of be my question, if there's any ability to delineate between the e-powered devices and physically powered devices. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, reps.
Okay, looks like we have no other questions, so thank you, representatives. And we will bring up next Matt Penniman and with the Michigan League of Bicyclists and Paul Runnels, board member for Open Roads. Gentlemen, you have the floor.
Okay. Mr. Chairman and committee, thank you for letting me come and offer my support for the Vulnerable Roadway Users Act and changes. I'm here. I'm on the board of Open Roads Bike Program in Kalamazoo. I also am a member of the Chain Gang and was a participant and a surviving victim of the crash that occurred on June 7th, 2016. We lost 5 very good citizens.
Take your time.
I myself suffered significant injuries, required roughly 6 months of physical therapy, and continue to have some, although minor, it's not obvious when I move around, after effects of the crash. I was able to get back on a bike and still ride. I ride a non-motorized bicycle, but given my age and sort of declining condition, I am a candidate for an electric bike. So I guess as a responsible bicyclist, my plan would be to use it to keep up with my younger, stronger friends. So I don't intend to just go out there and try to drag race to 30 miles an hour, for sure. In considering my testimony here, I reviewed some of the Michigan crash statistics for Kalamazoo County. And just because of my nearness to 2016, I started at 2016. And since then, we have had 11, as near as I could tell, we had 11 bicycle fatalities in Kalamazoo County. Now, 5 of those, of course, were the chain gang group. The other 3 were either treated as misdemeanors or less. And I think, just as a bicyclist who continues to be out on the road, that's inadequate. And I just based on that and just a general review of those Kalamazoo County statistics, definitely feel like this act and the modifications that it will make do give law enforcement and prosecutors an extra tool in assessing the penalties that should apply and may help motivate a little deeper investigation into some, especially fatal crashes. So, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Chair Shannon and members of the committee. I'm Matt Penniman. I'm Communications and Advocacy Director for the League of Michigan Bicyclists, here in support of these bills. First, want to note that these bills close a gap in existing law between charges that are not serious enough and charges that are too serious. We've heard from prosecutors, we've heard from an LMB board member, Brian Waldman, that prosecutors face a decision he describes as damn near impossible when deciding what charges to bring after a fatal crash or a crash that causes serious injuries, because the charges that they're sure they can prove are often a slap on the wrist. The charges that would be sufficient, they're not sure if they can show the intent that would be necessary to meet the elements. So this closes a gap and gives prosecutors and the judicial system additional options. And those still have to go through the full judicial process, the full investigative process. So it mirrors what we already have for people operating an implement of husbandry. So we recognize that farmers driving tractors down the road are not protected by a steel cage the way that people in cars are. And we want to protect them. So this recognizes that greater risk exists for all vulnerable roadway users, people walking, people on wheelchairs, people on horses, people on the Amish buggies, people on e-bikes and e-scooters. It defines vulnerable roadway users. It's an important concept in federal law. It needs to be in state law as well, as you heard from Representative Rogers. And it builds a flexible definition. So Representative Rogers' bill defines vulnerable transportation device. A number of the things in there were not in common use 10 years ago. So if this definition needs to be adjusted in the future, we have the flexibility to do that by adding or removing items from vulnerable transportation device or from vulnerable roadway user. Law is an expression of community values. This law's weakness is that on its own, it is not prevention, it is completely response. We have seen other legislative efforts that are about prevention. This one is about response. The strength is that it does express those values, and it shifts the culture to support those efforts of prevention. There's a whole safe systems approach that law enforcement and transportation planning are trying to shift to. This law shows why we need that, why we need to design a system that is safe for all users of the road. I wanted to briefly address a few points that were brought up. One regarding e-skateboards. There are definitely folks who use those irresponsibly, but there are also folks who use them responsibly. You see a lot of Lime scooters, bird scooters, especially around campus areas. And if a reckless road user hits someone on an e-scooter, which is considered an electric skateboard under the law, we want to have those same tools available to prosecutors. And I'd also note that these laws are for a moving violation causing death or serious injury. That moving violation doesn't have to be by the operator of a motor vehicle. It could be someone on an e-bike or e-scooter who crashes into a pedestrian, and these laws would apply to them equally. In regard to the question about lights, that is already a requirement under Michigan law, that if you're operating a bicycle after dark, and that includes an e-bike, you have to be showing a white light to the front and a red light to the rear. Or red reflector to the rear, I think, but red light is preferred. So we do already recognize those requirements in the law, and if someone is not meeting those requirements, that would be identified in the investigative process. So I appreciate those questions, but I think existing law kind of anticipates and addresses many of those potential concerns. And that's all I have today. Thank you for your time and attention. Greatly appreciate it. Happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. Do we have any questions? Doesn't look like we have any questions for you. Thank you so much for your testimony today. We good? Okay, yeah. Next up, we have Alex Cisak. And Alex is from Representative Conlon's office.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Shannon and members of the committee. My name is Alex Cisak, and I am Representative Conlon's Legislative Director, although I will be speaking on behalf of myself. I did not plan to testify this morning and wrote this testimony in an impromptu manner. although I thought that I would be remiss if I did not tell my story. I will be brief. The day was February 12th of last year. As you may recall, it was Super Bowl Sunday. I was spending time with my friends in Ypsilanti when I received a frantic call from my younger brother. My mom had died. I instantly thought, heart attack, aneurysm, stroke, but no. From what we understood at the time and later learned to be true, my mother, a pedestrian, was crossing the street at an intersection with right-of-way when she was struck and killed by a driver. The driver, a then 86-year-old man, failed to yield and was later charged with a misdemeanor for a moving violation resulting in a death. I also spoke at his sentencing, recalling just how close I was with my mom and how much more needs to be done to address the issue of pedestrian safety. House Bills 5223 and 5224 are a step in the right direction for protecting our pedestrians, bicyclists, individuals using a wheelchair, or those riding or operating a vulnerable transportation device. It is imperative that we keep these folks safe around roads, and levying enhanced penalties for moving violations that cause injury or death will do just that. Thank you again for giving me the latitude to testify today.
Of course, Alex, and I'm so sorry for your loss. Do we have any questions for Alex? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I should say also, we all are very sorry for the loss of the members of the chain gang. Okay, I do have a couple cards to read in. So, John Lamacchia from the Michigan Municipal League does not wish to speak but does support the bill. Mike Spence from Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, or SEMCOG, does not wish to speak but supports the bill. John Fournier from the City of Ann Arbor does not wish to speak and supports the bill. And thank you, everyone, for your testimony today. Up next, we have Senate Bill 465, introduced by Senator Singh, and joining him to testify is Adam Tontus. Close? Okay. You could clarify when you come up. General Counsel for the Michigan County Roads Commission Self-Insurance Pool. Gentlemen, the floor is yours, and I actually don't see, I thought I saw Senator Singh, but it looks like we have Chris up here today.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity. Much to my dismay, Sam had to get across the street, so pinch hitting here. We have a short video that we were going to play.
The snow is expected to return to West Michigan tomorrow. Lawmakers are moving forward with legislation aimed to keep drivers away from snowplows. News 8's Byron Tollefson live in Grand Rapids with more on this. Byron?
On roads like these, as well as highways, drivers would be required to stay about a dozen car lengths away from snowplows. As snowplow drivers prepare to head out again Thursday morning to clear the roads, Michigan lawmakers are poised to take another step to protect those crews.
We see successes other parts of the country. Hey, this makes sense. Let's do it.
The state Senate unanimously passed legislation this week requiring drivers to stay at least 200 feet away from snowplows.
It really is probably 12 car lengths, roughly.
Advocates say the bill is necessary because on icy roads, it can be hard for drivers to brake in time to avoid a collision.
To the average motorist, you're saying, that's way too much space. I can get stopped quicker than that. Well, in a perfect condition on dry pavement, you probably can. When it's slippery and snowing and you're going 40 and we're going 20, you're gonna move into that 200 feet really quick.
If a snowplow is stopped at an intersection, drivers must stop at least 20 feet away from it. The law would not apply when a driver is legally passing a snowplow. Jerry Byrne, the managing director of the Kent County Road Commission, says 3 times this winter, drivers hit snowplows, damaging the driver's vehicle and temporarily taking the snowplow out of commission.
So you've just taken that truck out that was going to treat maybe 100 miles of road that day and just took it out of service.
Byrne says the bill is also aimed to protect regular drivers because they're more likely he says, to be injured when they crash into a snowplow. The penalty for violating this would be a civil infraction. Burns says it's all about changing drivers' habits.
Laws are really about voluntary compliance. It's about education.
Like following the state's move over law by slowing below the speed limit and moving to an open lane if a snowplow is stopped on the side of the road.
A law enforcement officer was just killed within the last month because people weren't moving over. It's that same concept of public servants out there trying to serve the public the best they can, keep them safe, let them do the job.
The question remains over how this is going to be enforced. Burns says police likely aren't going to be following around snowplows or watching out for this kind of thing to happen. But if a driver does hit a snowplow, there's a good chance they'll be penalized under this law if it does become a law. This bill has been sent to the State House for likely a future vote. Live in
And here we are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you saw in the video, Senate Bill 465 makes a small change to Michigan law that will hopefully reduce the growing number of traffic accidents between snowplows and personal vehicles. In partnership with local road agencies, we modeled this bill on a successful Wisconsin law that has seen a reduction in snowplow crashes there. This bill, as noted, would require a motorist to stay 200 feet back of an actively engaged public snowplow, and if that snowplow is stopped at an intersection, a driver will be required to stay 20 feet back. We believe this bill will make it safer for both snowplow operators and motorists and reduce the number of crashes, which hopefully will save money for our local road agencies and keep the plows on the road clearing snow. So, as noted, pass the bill in February, pass the Senate, unanimously. And thank you for your time. And also joined here by Adam Tauntus, who is an expert in this space and can also add some.
Well, thank you so much. But first, I just want to make sure that we get that Chris Young is here representing Samsung, just so we have it on record.
Thank you, Chair.
Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'll be brief because I think it's been so eloquently put both in the video and by Senator Singh's staff. The thing that I wanted to stress is that the relationship between distance and time is something that is a learned relationship. 200 feet seems like an awfully long distance at first blush, but when you think about the fact that a passenger vehicle travels 88 feet a second at 60 miles an hour and travels 66 feet a second at 45 miles an hour, the relationship starts to be a little bit more clear. A friend of mine who's an engineer gave me years ago a vehicle speed distance stopping calculator. The color scheme dates it. It's from 1983. But basically, you turn the wheel to a speed, and it shows you under normal road conditions how long it's going to take a vehicle to stop. And it's worth pointing out that at 35 miles an hour, under pristine road conditions, it takes a vehicle 155 feet to stop. We're talking about crashes that are happening under adverse road conditions. And that adversity runs both ways, both for the plow truck, that piece of transportation infrastructure we're trying to preserve, taxpayer-funded piece of transportation infrastructure, and the motorist. There was really compelling testimony offered in connection with the legislation before about the real personal tragedy and loss that happens every time there's a collision between vehicles on the roadway. That's an equally important part of this. So we're very pleased that you're considering this. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. We do have a question from Representative Fitzgerald.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. Not so much a question as much of a uplifting of your policy that you have before us here today. When I was on city council in Wyoming, I was fortunate enough to be part of the rodeo, which, if anyone doesn't know, there's a American Association of Public Works. They do a rodeo, ROADEO. I've gotten to sit behind the wheel of a snowplow, see what these guys go through on a daily basis. Have not done a ride-along yet, which is on my list of things to do. But the fact of the matter is, these vehicles are large. The sight lines are sometimes obstructed by the equipment that is on that vehicle. And to think about a vehicle that's in your blind spot behind you while you have all of that instrumentation in front of you is a challenging thing for these public works operators to be concerned with while on the roadway. Obviously, this piece that you showed us here was in West Michigan. We do deal with a lot of snow and a lot of lake effect snow, so sometimes when it doesn't look like it's snowing on the radar, it's snowing hard in West Michigan. That these are things that I think you're right. We need to make sure the public is aware of how responsible this topic of the day is responsible road habits, right? The responsibility that you have to make sure that you're in control of the vehicle in good conditions and bad. And these public works operators are the ones who keep us getting to work safely. We want to make sure that they can do their job safely, so I really appreciate you bringing this forward here today.
Thank you. Representative Bruck.
Thank you, Chair Shannon. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. You were very specific when you said, when you're mentioning about the snowplows, so private snowplows would not be included in this, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then another clarification on limited access freeways, is there any delineation?
Yeah. The legislation doesn't delineate between the type and character of the roadway, but that's, was said earlier during this hearing, there's other existing law that sort of amalgamates that and puts it in a global context. If you're passing lawfully, whatever those circumstances might look like on that particular stretch of road, you're in good shape.
So to clarify, it would probably be the same lane the truck is in, the snowplow 200 feet back.
Correct.
Essentially, it wouldn't affect opposing traffic or multiple lane highways, the lane that the snowplow is not in.
Would not.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Correct.
Thank you, Chair.
Doesn't look like we have any other questions. Thank you so much for your testimony today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I do have a couple cards to read in. John Lamacchia from Michigan Municipal League does not wish to speak, supports the bill. Ed Noyola from the County Roads Association does not wish to speak, supports the bill. Okay, so there being no further business before the committee will stand adjourned.